Welcome, everybody. This is actually a dream come true for me. My name is Ronnie Esposito. I'm the founder of Acton Academy Pittsburgh. I'm sitting here with Kason O'Keefe, who is our operations guy at Acton Academy, and Matt Diesel, the owner and founder of Diesel Performance. My mission for this entire podcast is to bring like minds together and to have local business owners who share in the same philosophies and have a ton of experience with a lot of the things that we do here at Acton Academy and bring them to the set. And I'll be very transparent and honest. I just met Matt today. So this is going to be the most organic podcast I think we've done, but no better way to start off this entire thing than to just be authentic, organic, and see where it goes. So Matt, welcome to the first podcast at Acton Academy Pittsburgh.
Ronnie, thank you. And as you said, we just met today, but we met Kason a couple weeks ago, and a lot of similarities, so looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn it over to Kason. He's going to lead the discussion, and we'll take it from there.
All right, so I found something that you posted on LinkedIn, and I'm going to read a little bit of it, and then I want you to comment on it. Okay, so it says, a message to parents in sports. As your child begins or continues their journey through athletics, there are three truths every parent needs to fully understand. First, this is their journey, not yours. Your time as an athlete has passed. Now it's about them. I'm going to stop there and let you comment on that.
That's a great piece. So just a little bit about my background. I'm a local Pittsburgh guy. I grew up in Hampton. I went on to play baseball at Duquesne University. And I think one of the main reasons I went there, it's kind of a late bloomer, and I was looking at Waynesburg and Gannon University. And I truly believe I got into the forensics program at Duquesne. I'm clearly not doing forensic science right now, but so my parents kind of looked at me and they're like, it was only 50 people accepted across the country, right? And they're like, you're going. I'm like, well, I might not be able to play baseball there. So I ended up walking on. I had a hip surgery freshman year and elbow surgery freshman year as well. So it was a really tough road back. And that was where my journey started. I really believe that God was calling me to be a coach. And somebody in player development to impact players. We could talk, my career was probably a complete failure, honestly, from a playing standpoint, right? But it taught me so much of how to communicate with players and relate to players and then develop them. So one of the things I've seen, and I've been doing it since I was 19 years old, so I'm 39, 20 years later, and you talk about the journey being the kid's journey. And I have a couple kids myself now that are going through it at a young age. And it's an experience, right? It's so easy to get, you want them to succeed so fast, right? Like it's instant, we live in a world of instant gratification. And I think as a parent, your first job is to step back and really be a silent source of encouragement, right? You have to be willing to let them fail. And that's a lot easier said sitting in the seat here today than it is when you're watching your own kid fail, because we want to pick them up and we want to take them straight to where they want to be. And I don't actually think that helps kids or athletes these days.
When you say let them fail, we talk about that here all the time, but can you give me an example of what it means to let a young person fail in sports?
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned as a coach when I first started, and I thought the more I talked, the more I was coaching, right? And in a world of, I really started in travel baseball. We still have a component happening. One of the things I've always been real purposeful on and my passion is player development, right? When I played college baseball, we trained 75% of the time, we played 25% of the time, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in the world today, the kids are playing about 75% of the time and they're training 25. So why has the model flipped at young ages? So I thought by talking more, parents would love it more, right? They and I'm an energetic guy, so they would see the energy and it's like you're coaching. Well, I kind of learned if we're sitting here in our job today and somebody's constantly sitting there saying stuff and yelling at you, it's hard to perform, right? It's hard to think. You actually don't let them process thoughts. So one of the first conversations I have with parents at young ages is you have to stay silent on the sideline. You have to stay quiet. You have to watch him. I don't care if he goes over 4 with 4 strikeouts. That's part of the game. Mm-hmm. I think it's more important to teach them how to respond and talk to themselves, right? And there's two things. We respond, we react, right? So pause, respond, not just react to the situation. You must feed them the verbiage, right? One of the things I do is I'll be back, right? You struck out, great, I'm coming back. There's always another opportunity. That goes for life, that goes for sports, anything. Or I'm going to take one away in the field, right? Instead, I think is what you're seeing a lot of times these days is people immediately go to a cue one of the things my favorite in baseball is I'll go to baseball because that's what I've done all the time. It's like, put your back elbow up. Like, listen, that might be the worst cue I've ever heard for an athlete at a young age, right? But all you're doing is giving them internal cues. Internals are body feel, and external would be, we can't perform with internal cues, right? And we as adults can't do it, so why would we want our young athletes to? So like letting them go through the process, teaching them how to process, respond, and think is probably more important than anything else.
I love that. We talk about it all the time, is equipping the learners to be capable of doing it themselves versus telling them what to do. So
can I make one comment on that? Because you just said something that I say all the time, and I think the message is getting out there more these days. But you know, when I started this, a lot of private lessons were a big part of the industry, and I think they still are today, right? And here's what I would say about private instruction. Case, I know me and you talked about this the first time, right? Like if you do one lesson a week privately, I don't care if it's piano, I don't care if it's soccer, I don't care if it's baseball, right? You still have how many more hours in a week, right? Like if you can't take that and you're able to replicate it for yourself and continue to grow, that one lesson was what it was. It doesn't mean you can't get better in that 1 hour, right? But what about all the other, it's about compounding habits. So I always say if you can't assess and take that and apply it to what you're going to do, that one lesson really isn't good. So is what I want to tell athletes is our job is to make you your own best coach. I'm not standing in the box with you. No other coach is going to stand in the box with you. That's why I eventually shut up after 8 years of coaching. And like it's a silent thing. You choose when. But I think that's the piece is, and I think you guys would say the same thing, is you're trying to work with kids to make them the best version of themselves and be able to apply by themselves, not hold hand. I think we got a lot of hand holding going on in today's society.
And one thing I'll say is whenever you do see that learner or that athlete finally succeed, and the longer they fail, as soon as you see them succeed and they get that hit or they figure out a lesson in school or whatever, that's whenever the spark comes back. And that's whenever they realize, okay, I did this, now I can do it again. So the quicker they snap out of it and don't quit and have that positive mindset, that'll correlate to everything in life.
We all need a little, and some of us are different than others, right? We need that reinforcement that, like, we need to see. I'm careful with the word success, so I'm going to use it, but I'm very careful because it's all on how we define it, right? And, we have what I call, like, when we have an environment, like, you're dictating the percentage of the environment, like low growth, high performance, high growth, high performance. Like, they have different stages of the environment that we want to build out, and that's dictated by the athlete too, right? If you got a guy that cannot accept failure right now, we're going to have to ease him into it a little bit, right? But I think that component, one of the things I love doing as a coach, and I actually did it last year. I was filling in for a college prep team, our 18U guys, and the last game of the season, I went up to the umpire and I had to clear this right because what I was about to do probably wasn't pretty standard, but I told him that I was not going to coach that game. Now, please keep in mind, the parents knew my mission, my message from the very beginning, right? So it didn't look like I was just leaving the group and stopping, but I sat them down before the game and I said, listen, I'm out today. I'm gonna video. I'm not talking. You don't get to ask me questions. I said, you've had an entire summer, and I said, I want to see where you stand at this point in time. So I said, you guys can take turns coaching the bases. I said, here's the lineup. I said, you guys will make all decisions today. I will tell you, it did work out in our favor. We walked it off that day 6-5, but like you should have seen the situations that come up, and the umpires did approve it. But it was so cool to watch them in a scenario that they'd never been in, right? But I also feel like that's a pulse thing, right? So you know how far you can push, and you have to know how far you can push. Sometimes we push too far, sometimes we don't push enough. But that's a pulse piece that we have to constantly be aware of.
I love that. And the story that you told me when I first gave you the tour at Acton was super profound to me. Could you share a little bit of, you basically said that you turned an entire team around by having them put stuff on a whiteboard. Can you share that story?
I was wondering where you were going with that. So, I've coached a couple different high school programs. I led North Catholic. I actually started with Shenango and went on to North Catholic. When I took over that, they were coming off a 4-15 season or something. Yet they had like 12 seniors, and I came in. I'm like, I was like, we got something to work with right now, right? Little did we know the world flipped upside down that year. COVID hit. And I'll never forget, like, you had a group of guys that were like, hey, we're going on a senior trip first week of June, and they were starting to go like, Coach, we might have to cancel that. And I'm like, that's great, but COVID hit, right? So basically what happened, we lost all 12 seniors. The next year we came back with 1 senior, 1 junior, and all freshmen and sophomore. So it was like a total flip of the roster. And we never got to play a game, and then basically what happened was the first week of the season, I avoided COVID for the first year, right? Got it about a year later. I thought maybe I just would be able to avoid it, and I got it. So I was out for the first week of the season, and meanwhile, I think they were a 4A school, and they're playing 2 6As and a 5A, right? With, again, all underclassmen with no experience, right? So we all have an idea, sitting here where we're at today, of what potentially could happen in that scenario, right? And I'm sitting there at home, and they didn't even have video, they had Game Changer, but we could watch it, and basically lost the first one. I think they lost the second one close, and they got blown out in the third one, and I'm sitting there over Easter break. It's like 0-3, section starts the next week, and I got guys calling me. One kid goes, Coach, we're never going to win a game. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, we've only played 3. I was like, we haven't even done anything yet. And one of the things I always like to do when we work with a high school program is we have boat crews. It's an accountability system, so you're able to transfer leadership through the team and within the system, and have each player report to another and kind of up the ladder, and it gives a lot of accountability and ownership within the group. So we, at a Catholic school, we were off for Easter, so we got to practice Easter Monday, and section play started Tuesday, right? And again, it was that kind of mentality. So I told them, I was like, we're meeting at 9 o'clock on Easter Monday. I think we had a 9-hour practice that day. I don't even know if that's probably against the rules, but we did it. So the first thing I did, I came in with a giant whiteboard on Monday morning. That was my day 14 too. So I was sitting there like still trying to recover from the COVID. And I basically had the whiteboard listed out from 1 to 100, and it was all blank. And all I did on the top was put control what you can control. And I told them that we would start practice once they could list 100 things that they could control. Bottom line, it took them about probably 2.5 hours that day, so from like 9 to 11:30. And I'm always a guy like, listen, you let them go, right? Let them see what they can do, and then you kind of got to guide them as well, right? I don't want to say handhold. I don't want to give the answers, but give a little guiding. And they did get to it. They got to 100, right? Long story short, section play started the next day. They went down 7-0 in the first inning the next day, right? And I'll never forget, they chipped away. They ended up winning at 8-7 in the last inning, and then they won their next 11 games. So they won section blank, and I'll never forget the one kid turned, and I said, you told me when we were never going to win a game. I was like, you already won the section. He's like, good point. But back to the thing is people can't see what they can't see. I think it takes training, visualization, mentality to build vision, create vision. I think you got to work at it, right? I didn't know any of this at 19 years old. I didn't know any of it at 20. I think part of the reason I started studying it and reading it in so many books was I was like, what happened in college? I'm like, why did this go down the road? Now, and again, we're lifelong learners, right? So I'm probably going to say that again at 49, 59. And if we're not, it's a direction, it's not a destination, so we got to keep going.
I love that. That's awesome. Something that I noticed as I played some high-level athletics growing up is there was a lot of really, really good players that quit way too early to see what their potential was. Why do you think young people quit nowadays?
Man, and I'm not sure it's going to get any better, right? I think that's on us to constantly work to make today better than it was yesterday. I think Ronnie and I were talking about this in the beginning. I think you stepped out to grab some water, and we talked about the definition. One of my biggest definitions is commitment, right? I think that, again, it's clarity in this world, right? We all define things differently. We all perceive things differently. But when we look at what commitment is, and I think if you ask kids, I'd actually be curious to ask adults too what they believe it is, right? When you ask kids, they struggle to tell you, right? So, one of the things I've always said, commitment's not just saying yes, it's saying yes when the mood you set it in is long gone. And if you look back at life now, like how many times that's actually come up, right? But when things get challenging, I think we literally just revert back to our training, right? And that goes back to my point of like, okay, so why are kids playing 75%, training 25? Like if we revert back to our training when adversity hits, and I'll never forget, somebody said this, a high-level coach said at a seminar years ago, and he goes, adversity does not make you stronger. And you know, that's a common one you hear these days, right? And he goes, adversity gives you the chance to show where you're at as a person, right? And he goes, all that's going to show is whatever you've trained to that point in time. And it's not meant to be a negative. I think we as people need to self-assess that, be aware where it is, and then constantly go back to work at that. You know, and we'll be doing that for the rest of our life.
I love that. Do you think there's also a parent part to it? I think when I was growing up, I saw a lot of like parents almost looking at their kid as a way to gain confidence. It's like they're kind of like living through them, and therefore the kid was no longer, you know, doing it for themselves. They were doing it for their parents.
Yeah, so in my 20 years, obviously I've lived on that side, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to put everybody in a bucket because there's a lot of good people out there, and sometimes we don't even know we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
I even caught myself. It's like, you know, I what I've done for a living for so many years, and like my kid does this at 6 years old, and I'm like, what the heck, dude? Come on, it's not a reflection on me, right? He's on his own journey, right? You got to remind yourself that. So I think is what happens there is I think one, there's a carrot, right? I think parents think that there's scholarship money everywhere, right? I'm gonna tell you right now, it's a blessing and an opportunity if you get to play the game at the next level, right? And that's easier said than done, because I think 7.8% go play at the next level from high school, and again, like it beats your body up, right? And if you get to go play at another level, that's awesome. But these are blessings and opportunities that you get, and I think people are chasing money. I think people are chasing. When I say money, I mean scholarships that might not actually be available. You don't even know if your kid's going to want to play in 10 years. I watch kids look at it, and again, if you're reflecting, if you think your kid reflects you off the field, I promise you in a conversation, you're going to apply pressure to him, or her, right? Vice versa. And I think those conversations post-game, and I'm not talking just baseball, right? This is any sport, life in general, like those conversations have to be so carefully attended to, because I don't know if people realize we're wiring the kids every time we talk to them.
Let's dive deeper into that. How should those conversations look? Post game, going home.
Yeah, I for one, I would probably just start with the fact of like, listen, this was enjoyable to watch you. It was enjoyable to be a part of. I love you. Like that's where we need to start, right? One of the things I said I was never going to do was I didn't want to coach my own kids, right? And then I kind of got into the early stages of the community, and I'm like, I can't. Do I want to sit on the outside? But I also want them to have the best opportunity. So it's been an interesting learning journey for me as I sit there and stand on the field. And again, controlling my own emotions, controlling my own, like, what, did he just do that? Really? Like, but making sure that they know that dad and coach is a tough line. So making sure that they know that support system's there. I love you. I enjoy this opportunity to see you play. Hey, there's going to be another one tomorrow. As what I wouldn't do is go dissect the game with them. They have a coach. They have a coach for a reason, and there's a reason you're mom and dad, and you're not the coach, right? Now, if you're volunteering in the community, 100%. It's where the fine line. Talk to another coach. Maybe let him have the conversation with the kid. I've done that before with my own, and I think that's a great piece. But I don't. Again, if you're going to go break down what you believe as a spectator, listen. They got shows for that in professional sports, right? The coaches are laughing at those shows because they know that they don't know anything about how tough the game really is.
Awesome. That's great. All right, we'll go to your second point here. Every young athlete is on their own timeline. Your job, foster it, support it, never rush it.
Yeah, and that's a tough one, right? Because we all want everything now, right? I've always said development is a direction, not a destination. And today's another day on that directional arrow. And there's going to be times it goes forward, and there's going to be times where it goes backwards, right? But again, I don't know. As long as you know, there's winning, and if you can take the learn part of the loss is there. I'm not going to deny it, right? I don't want people to misconstrue. One of the things I always said is like, take the scoreboards out of youth sports, and I said, watch what happens, right? But everyone's like, oh, so you don't want to compete? I'm like, no, I'm probably one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet, right? But like, I'm telling you, a 7-year-old doesn't know what the scoreboard even means right now, right? Like they're looking at it and going, hey, it's 10-2, but they can't focus on what they're about to do on the next pitch, right? Like, focus on what you can control and get there. So, you know, if you're always sitting here and you're in that destination mode, well, what if I can't wait till I get here, I can't wait till I get here, dude, the journey's gonna fly by and you're not even gonna You're not going to enjoy any of it, right? Like you can't just look at that destination. So if you can change your mindset to be like, hey, I'm directional. I'm going to be where my 2 feet are today and get better. Like, listen, our brain literally takes us places we don't want to go. That's us sitting here today. And if you think, I know we're bad, so I know the kids are even worse than us, right?
But even seeing the body language too, if you're down 10-2, instead of being like, okay, let's see if we could score 2 runs in the next inning, you just see the energy draining from those kids because they are basing it all on the objective score.
And look at pro sports, right? There's blowouts in pro sports, right? So and look at the body language there. So again, the best of the best who get paid millions to do it are still going to have that issue, right? And that's where I think there's this big misconstrued perception, hey, there's an answer out there. I'm not really sure there's an answer for anything in life. I think we're all doing the best with the information we got at hand, and we're attempting to learn, right? But somewhere along the lines, and I'm not sure it's going to get any better with social media and technology, is like there's an answer for everything. And I truly don't believe, like from a sports standpoint, when we're doing something, do I have a blueprint? Yes, I have a blueprint. Do I believe it puts us in the best chance to succeed? I do. And again, use that word succeed lightly, right? Because we need to define that. But at the same time, if it doesn't work, then we have to evolve and adapt it, right? And we tweak it this way and then move it that way. And I got news, the coaches at the best level know how to do that, right? And they're fighting a battle these days too, because you got technology entering sports. Like, you can only feed athletes so much information before you just mess them up even more. They're all different, right? You hand them a 50-page report. How many people want to read a 50-page report on themselves, right? So it's an interesting piece, but I think, again, that directional movement, be where your 2 feet are, and hey, what do I need to do today, right now, what's important now to get better?
You're talking a lot about making sure that you define terms correctly. Is like for success, for example, something that we talk about here all the time is clearly communicating, and we do that through contracts, and we do that from consistent communication every single week. How do you clearly define the terms that you're teaching these young people so they know what it actually is that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when you're working within a team, like I'm going to speak from a business private sector standpoint and a school program kind of standpoint. Yeah. I think they're totally different. When you're working with a school, you got so many kids and you're focused on them, and that's truly what coaching was meant to be, right? Like when you start running groups and the private sector's taken over a lot in today's world, right? I don't care if it's hockey, football, like there's so many teams, right? Yeah. But when you have that many people, the message gets misconstrued, right? Or people don't read. I mean, there's so many emails going on these days, so how do you get that message across? When it's a team, it's easy. Like we're in, I don't want to say easy, but you're in weekly meetings, right? You're together, you're in that group of 25 and you're building a bond. But say you're in a softball organization, you got 20 teams, like I can already tell you from my experience that like each one's going to start doing their own little thing. And is what happens in today's world is the second something doesn't go somebody's way on the team, there's so many options, they go to the next one. And I've always said, like, if you as a parent, if you would just stay where you're at through the tough times, if you truly believe in the mission, the values, and what's there, and you stay where you're at and keep learning from your journey and keep improving, it's going to be better. But that doesn't happen in today's world. So like I always said, a couple of years ago, we had a group that finished up. They came from 9 years old to 18. I said that'll be the last time it probably ever happens in today's world, due to the fact that we're on a never-ending merry-go-round looking for the next best thing. Most of the time, your grass isn't green on the other side. It's green where you water it. So start watering it.
That's great. I have a question on that. As far as like setting the standard across your organization, you have lots of different coaches, and obviously we talk about it's their own journey for the young people who are playing the sport. How much specifics do you give your coaches on, like, this is the way that we do things and you don't go against this, versus giving them the freedom to run their team how they want to run the team?
So one thing, I'll share a little backstory here. And again, when we started this 17 years ago, there was 3 or 4 of us, and we coached every team. And again, I go on to mention that that's an unsustainable lifestyle. We had a lot of fun in our 20s. We traveled a lot from March through the end of July, spending time with teams. But there wasn't family, there wasn't kids. It was easier to do. One of the biggest challenges, and I don't have a problem talking about it because I think it actually impacted, once you went to one coach per team and you started spreading your wings with that became very challenging, right? And I think that's challenging in today's world, right? Building culture, building organization. just with where we're at with society, I think a coach has to have certain standards of how we operate, but at the same time, they gotta be given freedom to exercise and learn. And here's the other thing too, from a development standpoint, there is only so much I can tell you. Like what I learned because I spent 20 years in a cage, hands-on experience. Like I can write it down for you all you want, but you're still gonna perceive it differently than me, right? Or our eyes are gonna look at it differently. So I think you have to give them that freedom to learn as they go through their own journey. But at the same time, I think they're getting judged heavily by parents these days, right? I know coaches that have walked away from youth sports. I know coaches that have walked away from high school programs because they don't want to deal with the parents anymore. And that's a realistic thing we're dealing with in today's world. Like, are coaches going to stay because is it worth what they're putting up with as they're going through it?
Yeah, we had a similar conversation yesterday with a potential new family, and one of the things that we brought up was the fact that you letting your kid fail, and a lot of the opportunities that occur in the studio and the successes that occur are because of failure, and making sure that if that child goes home and is not used to what we do here at Acton and the contracts that they sign and dealing with the issues, you go home, you tell your parent, all of a sudden the parent calls our school and they're like, hey, you guys need to fix this. So Matt, when we spoke earlier, you told me about a story whenever you were coaching at a baseball team. And I thought this was extremely profound because a lot of the things that we've talked about correlate so much between, how you coach and how you work with athletes. It's not just that you're a coach. Your way of approaching kids is exactly what we do at Acton Academy. So if you don't mind, share the story that you shared with me about the running pole to pole.
Absolutely. I'll keep names out of the story and schools just to protect everyone. But obviously when you're on a journey with teams and coaches and players, I mean, from all my experience playing, you are going to have conflict. You're going to have fights. Now we like to try to attempt to turn those fights into productive conflict, right? But when you're dealing with personalities and different people, you're bound to go on a journey that's crazy, right? And that's part of my problem is I think people look for this happy Cinderella story all the time, like everything. So no, the ones that end with that final result that they're looking for, has anyone ever dove into the stories that they're going to tell day to day? Because they're going to sit there and tell you like things you never thought you'd hear, right? And I think that goes to show that the growth comes from those pieces, not from it being like, yeah, this went the way I wanted to, right? So in this instance, we had a young team, and when you have a young team, especially in a high school level, you're going to be dealing with maturity pieces, right? It's just everyone's on a different level. Our experience, and I always say wisdom comes from experience plus introspection. And if we don't have that introspection and the reflection on the experience, we don't have anything, right? We just have unprocessed data at that point. And I think that's a piece in life we learn as we go, that if we can go back on all of our experiences, good, bad, we all mess up, right? Forgiveness is huge. And we can take that introspection and make it better moving forward. Like that's where we want to be. So in this case, we had a young team and we were doing a competitive scenario in practice, and there was one player and he wasn't quite taking it seriously, right? So somebody else said something to him. It turned into a little scuffle, and before you know it, you got a scuffle that you got to deal with, right? And as a coach, you gotta make sure every time we have an action, there's a consequence when it's the standard, right? And you hear that all the time. The standard is the standard, so you got to make sure you define your standards. They got to have clarity. Clarity is a huge important piece. And in this case, I had both players do polls before practice, right? And one player ran and one player walked them, right? And the one player went up there and he said, Coach Diesel, he said to do 10 pulls, and he goes, well, he said to do 10 pulls, he didn't say to run 10 pulls. And I had some young assistants, and as he's walking them, they're absolutely fuming behind the scenes, right? And they just, it's a reaction they're looking for, right? And I said, stop. I was like, don't look at him. I was like, don't pay any attention to it. I was like, focus on what we're doing for the grade of the team right now, the rest of the team. And I said, we'll deal with that later, right? So he concluded, and we went and sat down, and I don't even think he came back because he was probably thinking he was either going to read out or something else. But again, these are all stories like, play at the college level, man. We'd be out in the outfield at each other's throats after the game, right? And coach would sit in the dugout and let us do it, right? Like, hey, you guys go figure this out. You're young men that are trying to attempting to figure this out. Like, go figure it out, right? So, I basically walked out of that practice, and I pulled him aside. I said, hey, I said, don't bother due to what happened to me. I was like, you're not going to play in the playoffs, right? And I held true to that. Could he have helped us? Yes, absolutely. But I think these are learning experiences. And again, not using any names. I think the kids actually doing pretty well today in the college environment. So I think this is a component where, again, wanting a reaction, but like, you need to take the environment. Do we want our kids to respond like that when there's a consequence? Absolutely not, right? Did he? Yeah, he did. It is what it is, right? He did it, so time to learn from it. Mom or dad might not have been happy about playoff scenario, but maybe he figured out maybe that was a big turning point for him.
I was just going to say that. So if you ask that particular kid, what happened in your life that was kind of a turning point in your athletic career, if you would have reamed him out as he was running from or walking from pole to pole, that would not have been his story.
Yeah.
But as soon as you did what you did and reacted and said, okay, this is your choice, and there's the consequence, and I'm going to take exactly what it is that you love away from you, I will guarantee you that story came up many, many times well beyond that day.
And even if it didn't, it probably does subconsciously.
Oh,
right?
For
sure. I'll kind of throw the Shenango piece back in, especially now that I know you went there, right? We have a huge similarity there, and when we went there, and I told you I took away their phones, right?
Yeah.
And again, to teach them to, hey, when you're sitting at breakfast, let's interact, let's connect, right? Let's find a point where we can grow a little bit together right now, not just sit on the phones. And there was I didn't say this earlier, but it backfired on me a little bit, right? So the one night, 4 players, I won't use any names, right? But 4 players stayed out past curfew. I'm like, hey, we're back at 11 o'clock. Well, you can only imagine the first excuse, right? We don't have our phones, right? And I'm like, we all know the time. And I'm like, I told my assistant, I'm like, of course. I said, when we don't have their phones, we can't get a hold of them. I said, now we're working around Universal Studios. And I can say this because everything turned out good, right? We're looking around Universal Studios for them. So I'm sitting above the elevator. I had the whole team in one room. And I said, you're not going to bed till everybody's back. And I was like, at the time, my reaction was like, I'll see you in the weight room at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I told my assistant, I'm like, man, I was like, we're going to suffer because of that too. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. So they came back, and I paused and I just said, hey, I'm gonna reflect on this. And I said, we're gonna talk in the morning when we get to the field, and I'm gonna figure out what we're gonna do. So I took basically every hour that they were past curfew, and this is a hard. It sounds easy, but it's a hard exercise. They took a bat, put it above their head, and they had to run as many minutes as they were behind curfew, pole to pole. In fact, we're in Florida, and one of the trainers comes up to me and he goes, Coach, are you sure this is okay? I said, I don't care. I said, you can stand here all you want, make sure they're okay. But I said, they will finish every last minute that they went past curfew last night. I would pull each kid aside in between, and we talked about it while they were doing it, right? Just as a connection point, because I think as you're going through consequences and situations like this, I think you have to help feed the narrative too. You have to help feed the narrative so that they're not taking it and spinning it in a direction you don't want them to spin it in.
Yeah. No, it's extremely important, and I think they could have easily just blamed you and said, he's the meanest coach ever. I don't want to play for him, and go back to their parents and say I quit. And if the parents let that happen, then I guess the cream always rises to the top, and the strong survive, and the weak ones don't. But that was an awesome story.
I have a question. You look at like the Williams sisters, you look at Tiger Woods, you even look at someone like T.J. McConnell. And it looks like throughout their life, their parents told them exactly what to do at all points during the process. But then you also look at people that were going to be, the best of the best, and they ultimately quitted at some point in the process, and their parents were almost too hard on them to, ultimately get to where they could have gone. Where is that, fine line to, I don't know, obviously the Woods and the Williams sisters were very successful, so where do you think, as far as structure and telling them what to do versus, letting them figure it out?
Yeah, I've done a lot of studying into this, and I'm sure that will continue to evolve. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan. I've listened to a lot of his stuff that he's put out there. and done a lot of reading on it. And I think, again, I want to reiterate that I truly believe it's a pulse piece, right? I mean, you're going to have different kids. Generations are changing. I think first and foremost, as a parent, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I do believe burnout is real, right? Any human being that does something long enough, at some point, might question why they're doing it, if they should continue doing it. And I think that's on us to figure out like what our true purpose is and what we value in this world, right? So, you know, if you're going to place an emphasis so high on the game at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, well, I got news for you. They're going to get to 15 and probably question, is this what I really want to do? I said earlier, early to peak, early to rot, right? Like, we don't want to peak at 10 years old, right? Now, again, we don't technically ever peak. We want to keep going. But, like, as a parent, you should think that, like, I want to foster this in a way that we're still going to love it. Because if we can love it, and again, there's a difference between interest and commitment, right? Like, you know, are we interested in this or committed? Because I think a lot of people are interested, right?
Yep.
And if we don't have that love for that training process, so like I'm very cautious on that. Like, and again, keep it exciting, keep it passionate, control G. Teach the mindset, the effort, and the hustle, so that the blueprint can actually take over from a skill standpoint down the road, right? If there is one thing everyone's so worried about, and I'm not against it, right? Like, yeah, I want to, from a baseball standpoint, I won't bring other sports in, but I'm sure it's the same thing, just whatever that sport is. If we want to acquire these skills and we want to do it well, I agree, right? But at the same time, what's the one thing you can't catch up with faster in life is like how we think, how we're going to respond, and that mindset on a daily basis. Like, you don't get to turn that on. That was something I read about for 15 years afterwards, and I'm still trying to read about it every single day to improve it or change my perspective. And also help connect with others as we do it. So I would like to see more of it with kids at an early age, because the second something gets so tough, they don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, it's you know, it's like you said, it's persistence, but in my experience, it's, you know, grit, confidence.
Yeah.
And the way that you develop that is to face those challenges, like we've mentioned numerous times on this podcast so far. Facing those challenges, not being afraid of failure, picking yourself up, having a strong support team around you. You know, a lot of families come to Acton Academy from private schools, from public schools. They try both of those. Then they say, okay, we're going to homeschool for a little bit. That's tough because you're the parent and the teacher, and there's no boundaries, there's no social interaction.
Yeah.
So then they join a homeschool co-op because there's a little bit of socialization there. And they're like, we want something that's kind of individualized, that kids would have the opportunity to attend in a building that's like a homeschool, but there's also that socialization piece. And that's one of the most important things we do at Acton Academy is, you know, you have those Socratic discussions in the morning. You can see and interact with your other peers. You compete against them, but ultimately what you're doing is maximizing your own true potential. You're not trying to put someone else down to make you feel elevated. And a lot of the way that they get to that result is by failing. You know, we have something called Fun Friday. Every Friday, if you hit your goals, you can participate in Fun Friday. And maybe it's going to the trail, or maybe it's, you know, building a fort in the woods, or playing a game here in the campus. But if you are sitting out because you didn't hit your goals, the next week it's almost impossible for that learner not to hit their goals, because they watched everybody else have fun. And maybe they do, but whatever their journey is, that's their own journey, and the lights might be dim and it might look black and white to you at that moment as that learner. But I can tell you, when those lights come back on and you face that failure and you had the grit and confidence to continue on, the spark that comes back is like, I did it. You know, and we brought this story up yesterday on camera. I started the school for my daughter. She's 14, and we have squads. You know, we have town council meetings, which is all the squad leaders that meet and talk about what's going on here at Acton, what's succeeding, what isn't, what should we change. And that's, you know, there's a guide in the room, but it's all led by the leaders of the squads that meet in town council on Tuesdays. And so as the squads, your peers nominate you as a squad leader. And my daughter wouldn't even put her name in that. She's very shy. And she wouldn't even put her name in the hat in order to be elected as squad leader for a long time. And she would come home and we're like, you know, who are the new squad leaders? Every 6 weeks we, you know, change squad leaders. And she would say it was this person or that person. It was the same leaders. that just kept getting picked over and over again. And I said, well, did you at least attempt to? And she, no, I didn't. But she did come home for probably the last 3 or 4 sessions and said, I put my name in. And it's like, all right, great job. Now at least you can have a chance to win. But she didn't get it. And I'll be honest, as the founder of Acton Academy, and I know what the answer would have been because I know Kaysen, if I would have come here and said, I want my daughter to be squad leader, so make her squad leader, you know, maybe I would have had an influence on that decision. I've never once said that, you can vouch for that. But I can tell you, he would have been like, nope. I mean, my kids have been late before just because I had to pick up other kids. And I said, hey, we're running 10 minutes late, but they don't want to miss open discussion. Can you pause until we get there? And his answer was, no. And I respect him for that. And they respected that. And they sat outside because we have a hard start at 8:45. And if you miss opening discussion, you're not going to interrupt it as they're, you know, as they're in the flow. So back to my story, 4 sessions into last year, my daughter put her name in the hat, finally came home. After all these years of being through start to finish with every building we've been in at Acton Academy, she said, Dad, I'm squad leader. And that was like the biggest aha moment because now she got a taste of that. Now you start to build on those successes.
I think that's a huge piece. You said 2 things, and I may miss the one because you said some good stuff there. But you talked about not bringing others down too, as you're saying that. Like
right.
you can't be great without the greatness of others, right? Like we live in a competitive world. I'll never forget, and I don't have any problem owning this because I think it's pretty common in sports, right? I think kids. Parents, I think you start to root against it, like, hey, my kid's here, but if this kid fails more, now my kid's going to have a bigger opportunity. Like, listen, I remember saying that in college myself, and I don't have a problem saying that. Like I said, we're all broken. We need to learn what we've done wrong and get better. But like, dude, that's not the ultimate team, right? Like, you can't build something special without the others there. And I think that second piece is once you get a little taste, right, you can go a little bit further with it, right? You start to feel, hey, I can accomplish this. And you said the word confidence, right? And I'm just curious, I think everybody's in a different spot with this, right? In your guys' opinion, what breeds confidence?
In my opinion, it's facing failures, getting through them, and having confidence in yourself that you've been through enough in your past, and whatever level that is. It could be at a 4-year-old level where you struggle walking into the school without your parent holding your hand, but all of a sudden you find, you know, you get through those challenges in life, and you faced it, you got through it, you weren't handed somebody that put their hand out and said, okay, I'm gonna do this for you or come to rescue you. And repeating that over and over again, getting in front of people, talking to people, that breeds confidence. I think it comes over time in the face of failure.
Yeah, I don't disagree, right? Obviously our preparation plays a role, but I think as you face each failure and you start to realize, and again, there's good and bad, right? And you're gonna face them. If you can take and realize, hey, this was the worst thing that could happen, right? You start to take that fear out of it, right? And you start to realize, I can handle this, right? Before you know it, you've handled so much that, like, it's just stacking upon each other, and you're at a different point in your life. Now, it can go the other way, too, right? It can stack in a different direction where you don't feel like you're confident, right? And you're adding this up and this up and this up. And, you know, I'll say, I have a definition of mental toughness. Like, people talk about this one a lot in the sports world. I'm going to go directly from the baseball side. I have another one for just regular sports. But, I always told the kids, and I make them recite it, right? Like, word by word, like they had to have the clarity of the definition, because it was the ability to play the game, pitch by pitch, play by play, in the present moment without past influence. Say it, repeat it, buy into it. And I told him, I was like, listen, I don't care about your shirts with words on it, because I said words don't mean anything unless you can embrace it and use it and apply it every single day. So I was like, put mental toughness on a shirt all you want, right? Can you apply it to your life every single day? And again, knowing that, like, hey, can I breathe? Can I relax? And then can I go play this pitch, right? With nothing other in our head, right? That's a
very hard
concept to do, right? Most of the time we're like, well, it didn't happen on the right. Like, we have signal lights, what I like to call signal lights: green light, yellow light, red light, right? And I think we want to play the game. I think we want to play the game of life with green light. I don't think a lot of us do, though, right? Like, yellow light, you're caution. Red light, you're doubting, everything, right? You're usually doubting everything because you're probably looking in the rear view mirror.
Subconsciously, if not consciously.
Yeah, right. And there's somebody told me this, and they're like, "Hey, windshield's big, rear view mirror small, right?" So there's a reason that's so small. Don't get stuck looking in it, right? Because it's there, but it doesn't mean you can't change it for the future.
Well, then you have social media, you have outside influences. There's so many variables of people who are just casting shadows of doubt. Like I said, when we started the school, I had very close friends of mine and family members that were like, almost like wanted an intervention, like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. Why would you do this? They already exist. And I said, but not to the point to where I think it can go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but the second something happens, Matt, you go back to those voices, and they're in there.
They're in there. They absolutely
and
are
you're
in
like,
there.
maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. And then you get a win, and you're like, they're wrong. And so as those, and these are my mom's words, as those mountains that look like mountains, because at the time you're very low, and even a speed bump looks like a mountain at the time.
Yeah.
She's like, you just keep pushing, because I know things are going to work out. I did this for the last 50 years of my life. I know the work ethic you have. I know the mindset that you have. I know that you're passionate about what you're doing. Just keep pushing. And those mountains will eventually become speed bumps, and those speed bumps will be like lines on a road. It's challenging in the moment when you're in the weeds or celebrating success. When you're looking at it from a very narrow lens, it's very easy to paint that as your reality. But you always have to step back and realize that things are always evolving.
And again, one of the things we use in sports, and I think in life, I think feelings are real. Feelings are validated, right? I think you need to match feelings with principle, right? And match feelings with principle through commitment. Like C is greater than F. Commitment's got to be greater than your feelings, right? And that goes for anything in life. Like I said, if we truly, I think one of the things I heard from a lot of top coaches and sports psychologists and psychologists in life too, like if we're going to let feelings run what we do, we're probably in trouble. And the longer I go, the more I see. I really do believe that.
Absolutely. And
The way that I look at confidence is it has nothing to do with what you do versus what you don't do. It has everything to do with if you're willing to continue to get up and try again.
Yeah.
So I think, and we had this Socratic discussion with our learners probably 3 months ago, but it was looking at the things that they were good at versus the things that they deemed they were bad at. So like we had them think about, all right, I'm bad at these things, I'm good at these things. And then we talked about, okay, how often do you do those bad things, the things that you think you're bad at, versus how often do you do the things that you think you're good at? And it's like the only reason why you're good at these things is because you think you're good at them, and then you continue to do them because you get that, sense of confidence from it. But if you worked as hard at the things that you deem you're bad at, then you're going to start becoming better and better at those things. But I think it ultimately comes back to, are you willing to do the thing over and over again? And like judging yourself, your self-esteem on if I'm willing to try and get better at it, not if I'm successful at it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one of the psychologists I follow, he always says, he's like, you're not judged by the number of times you fail, you are judged by the number of times you succeed, and the number of times you succeed is directly related to the number of times you fail and keep on going, right? So, if you think about that statement again and defining success, but like there's that direct correlation of like when you mentioned Woods and everything else earlier, I think there's a component of stick-to-itiveness of just, hey, this didn't work, but guess what? I'm going to go another path. Hey, that didn't work. I'm going to go another path, right? And I think a lot of times it's easy to navigate just off the path, say I'm done, right? I try to tell players, I'm like, pretend like you're going through the woods. I'm like, and I said the path is going to be, you ain't going to see the path, right?
Yep.
I was like, right? I was like, so how many people are going to go into the woods where they can't see the path and where they're walking? They're probably not going to, right? So I think that's where we kind of stand, and I think if you can get to that point where like I'm willing to do that and challenge that comfort zone, you want the people that are willing to challenge that, or like, hey, I want to do the project that I'm not sure we can do this right now, because you are going to challenge a level of growth that you never thought you had. But if we live inside that other piece where it's like, okay, can do this, we can do this, this is easy, this is comfort, like when it does come time to push it, most likely that person's wired not to do it.
That came from Kobe. I'm not sure if you can do it. I love that. But it's like, how many opportunities do young people have to actually go through that process? It's like here at Acton Academy, we trust the learners to fail so often. It's like part of our 6-week projects is like they could get up and stand in front of a group of people and they could completely flop. But we're not going to step in at any point during that 6 weeks and be like, hey, you're going in the wrong direction. It's like we're going to let them go in the wrong direction. And if they show up on exhibition day and the rocket doesn't explode the way that they want it to, it's like they failed. But they learn the lesson of going through the failure. And then in addition to that, it's like if young people are told what to do at all points during the day, and they go and they have a coach and they're told what to do during that hour-and-a-half session, and then their parents are telling them when to do the chores and when to do all these other things, like how many opportunities are they actually given to think for themselves and construct, what am I going to do today and learn today, or when I go and do sports, it's like, how am I going to get better at the sport? It's like, I'm just showing up, the coach is telling me what to do, and that's all I have to do. It's like, we need to give them more opportunities to, discover what it means to be an independent person and construct the strategy to get better at whatever it is.
Think about it in the work world today, right? Like, whether you think about it from an owner standpoint or an employee standpoint, like, what do all employees want? Like, they want autonomy, right?
Leaders.
But then then as an owner, you're like, but you can't have it yet. Like, you don't. So there's such a disconnect because people are, again, they're where they're at. Our past is part of us, right? So good, bad, our parents. Our job is to take everything that we've experienced, right, and again assess, reflect, and then make it better moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that autonomy is huge. I just wish it would start earlier.
That's why we exist.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think this was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you guys, and I'm sure we're going to be doing a lot more.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Pleasure getting to know you, Matt.
Same.